Vinto qualcosa, però
campione del mondo.
No, il problema è che non l'ho vinto nella mia terra, capito? Mi hanno tolto di festeggiare nella mia terra nel 78, per quello questa è la festa più importante della mia vita.
Napoli, che significa per te a questo punto?
Mia casa sicuramente.
Naples is now my home. Simon Kuper, there you heard saying, I couldn't celebrate in my land in 1978. Of course, he'd been left out of the World Cup winning squad in 1978 by coach Cesar Menotti. But it was also, and that's what the allusion is there, it's to politics and the time of the generals, saying he couldn't celebrate there at the time.
Yeah, I mean, initially he was quite politically naive. And so when the generals began celebrating him as a teenager and when he won the Youth World Cup in 1979, he was sort of quite happy with it. He liked the fact that the leaders of the nation were saying nice things about him. It was later, as with many Argentines, that he gained awareness of what had happened under the junta, and he became horrified by it. And all his life, really, Argentina declined politically. There was the horrors of the military regime, and afterwards there were constant economic crises. And he, I think, came to see himself as the true spiritual leader of the nation, the incarnation of Argentina. And the politicians were just kind of pretend prophets who always did bad things to Argentinians. He represented the country, and he brought it its greatest triumph in 1986, a World Cup that was, in a way, more important for Argentinians than 1978 because it wasn't tarnished by the horrendous surround of the military regime. And it was won with beautiful football. It was won by the football that Argentinians had had in their heads since the 1920s. Not the rest of the team, but Maradona, a football of creativity and dribbles. So 1986, which is also the beginning of civilian rule, a relatively optimistic period, it kind of stands out, if you look back on Argentina, as the kind of the beautiful moment after the fall and before the next fall. And so I think he came to see himself as both the incarnation of the nation and also, like many great Argentinian heroes, as a kind of Catholic sacrificial saint who gave of his flesh, who punished himself physically to redeem the nation's sins. This sounds a bit high-blown, but I think Jimmy would say that in Argentina it makes more sense. So he became the Evita Perón of his time, and he will have a funeral like Evita's despite the pandemic, which, having seen the images just now, looks like a very potential super spreader event, I'm afraid.
Jimmy Burns, I mean, I remember well that quarterfinal in 1986. And of course, it was laden with political significance.
Well, yeah, I mean, how can one forget it? It was Falklands round two. It was Malvinas Venganza. It was all there, the whole drama, the political drama of it. And poor old Bobby Robson, who I interviewed for the book, I mean, he dreaded the whole thing. Berardo was loving it, and so was the entire Argentine team. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously, hugely emotional. The whole thing was, the Barras Bravas out there waving their Argentine flags, jumping up and down like they used to do during the Falklands War. And for me, it sort of brought back the worst of the Argentines, quite frankly. But off the pitch. But of course, as Simon rightly says, it was a moment of beautiful football. Argentina playing probably the best game or a World Cup of their history, and all thanks to this one genius on the pitch.
And do you agree? Do you agree with Simon? Do you agree with Simon that what we're witnessing now is an Evita Perón moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, Simon, in due respect, I think pitched that straight out of my biography. Actually, I did sort of predict several years ago when I wrote the first edition that whenever Diego dies, and we don't quite know when he will die, but he will die eventually, his funeral will be as big, if not bigger, than Evita Perón's, quote unquote. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But look, I can't let this go by. I mean, this question, this painting of Diego as the great politician, the great liberator, the great people's liberator, it's all complete balls, really. I mean, really, I mean, we've got to get some sort of reality check on this. I mean, I wasn't in Mar del Plata that day, but I bloody followed it, I mean, this was serious business. To suggest that Maradona was the new Che Guevara of the continent, that somehow he was emerging as the new Perón. it totally defies any sense of reality. I mean, it's pure delusion. And I mean, the point about Diego Maradona and the reason that Argentines are obsessed with him is that they belong to a totally failed state. And the only export they've ever really had, apart from Fangio, is Diego Maradona. And he's a world icon, loved around the world because of his genius on the pitch. And, you know, I remember when I was doing the book.
But hang on, Jimmy, are you not overlooking a certain Lionel Messi?
Sorry?
Are you not overlooking
Messi? We can talk about Messi if you like, but I mean, as Simon knows as well as I do and has written about it, Messi's problem is that he'll never be as loved by the Argentines as Diego, for a very simple reason that he spent since the age of 13 outside Argentina, you know, which is something that Diego never did. You know, I mean, you know, that's another subject. But I'm just talking about the politics of it. I mean, let us not forget. All right, he didn't play in the 78 World Cup, but in 1979, he played in the Youth Championship in Tokyo and came back and with Videla and a whole bloody junta, went into the Casa Rosada and went out onto the balcony and showed his wonderful trophy with the junta behind him. Let's not forget that.
David Gormenzano, you agree that we're making too much of Maradona?
We or the Argentines?
Yeah.
I think no. I think Maradona is. I mean, I'm 50, and since the age of 10, I've been passionate about football, and Maradona is in the pantheon of great footballers. So and about the politics, as Jimmy was saying, I think Maradona reflects very well the Argentines, the people. I think he didn't have a great expertise on world affairs.
So he's not the vanguard of the revolution. He reflects his times, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think he disliked the US, and I think in Argentina, disliking the US is something you share across the political spectrum, whether you're right wing or left wing. He was very nationalistic. He was fascinated by Latin American brotherhood, although he was also very Argentine, and there was the war with Brazil and Pelé, and that's very Argentinian as well. Argentines don't like Brazilians, Brazilians don't like Argentines. I think he reflected so well, and he was defiant. Sometimes he liked the media, he liked to be exposed, he liked to be on camera. Sometimes he was insulting journalists and he would turn them away. Sometimes he loved people coming to him, and another moment he would be very rude and turn people away. Many things that during my stay in Argentina sounded very Argentinian.